progress go? Hey, why am I underneath all the emails, calls, paperwork, and stuff? More stuff. Is there an end to this? I'm a prisoner of my own machine.
Sound familiar? Well, it's time to get out of all that stuff and get your life back with the VIP Coach. No Hype Allowed. Hosted by Executive Performance Coach John Davidson and HighLevelPerformance.com. Here's your host, JD.
This is JD, the VIP Coach, and it's great to be here on the show with you. This is No Hype Allowed, and we are halfway into 2008. We've gotten past the 4th of July, and I'm real excited about doing the show with you today because we have a different format today. Rather than just hearing me talk, I'm going to be doing live coaching on No Hype Allowed. So what we've got here is we've got a number of individuals that have been calling in throughout the nation. We've been announcing this throughout the week. And I'm going to bring a gentleman in here on the line. His name is Jim. He's from Pittsburgh. And Jim has a challenge with his team. Jim, go ahead. How can I help you?
Hey, JD. Thanks for taking my call. I am an entrepreneur, and I want to be able to spend more time away from the office, but I can't get my people really to run on automatic. What are your suggestions for that?
Well, what kind of organization are we talking about? What's the industry?
It's the real estate industry.
Mm-hmm. How long have you been doing that?
About 10, 15 years.
So overall, I mean, if you were to look at your team, how many A players do you have?
Oh, gee, that's a tough question. It's hard to say. I'd say I have one or two A players.
And what's the total size of your team, Jim?
About 6.
So you have 6 on your team. You have 2 that are A players, and the rest are B's or C's.
That'd be right.
And what kind of methods or what kind of instruments, instructions, how would you describe the way that you're building your team? Tell me about how you do meetings. Kind of take me into your world. Give me more data.
Well, this is really where things can start kind of falling down because there's so many things coming at us each and every day. There's so many fires to put out, and goodness gracious, if I had to do a staff meeting, I think so many things would pile up while we're in the staff meeting. And so what we're finding is that we can't get things just even delegated. We're not able to take the darts that are coming at us, and so we have no time to plan really.
I see. So there's just so much to do. You're overwhelmed, and so there's no time to stop and plan and instruct. You're just constantly doing. It's go, 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 go. Is that right?
I'd say that's a fair assessment. What happens also is that, then other clients are angry because we're spending time doing something else of some emergency that's come up, and you can only tell clients so many times that, I'm sorry, I've got this curveball that got thrown at me this day because they're expecting tip-top service, and then they also feel like I'm not important enough to get tip-top service, I guess.
Okay. All right. I may need some more data, but let me ask you, Jim, do you have something to write with?
Yes, I do.
Okay, very good. And please sit up in your chair so you're in a learning posture. I'm going to give you some input now. I'm going to put a model in the middle of us so that we can look at this from both sides. And I'd like to just set this up. We are both of equal stature. I respect the fact that you're a business owner. I am going to play the role of coach, which is somebody with outside eyes who can see what you can't see. I'm very objective. So I'd like you to please write this down.
Okay.
Draw a triangle.
Okay.
All right. Now, I'd like you to label all sides of the triangle with the following. The first side, or the top, we'll call leadership.
Okay.
Okay, one other corner, the left-hand corner, we'll call people.
Gotcha.
And the third corner, we're going to call system.
Okay.
Okay. Now, Jim, this is a model. It's a lens for you to pinpoint where the root cause of the challenge is. Oftentimes as business owners, we're faced with the challenge to find the right challenge. We make assumptions about what's really going on when, in fact, we haven't really looked at the real cause of what's going on. So if you look at this from a helicopter view, essentially what it's saying is that your challenge is due to a leadership reason, it's due to the people in your company, or it's due to a systems issue. Now, when I say systems, that means all the moving parts that make up the whole. And when they interdependently act together, they're not engineered in a way to produce the success you're looking for. So there are certain systems that tend to neutralize success. One of those is the hiring system in your organization. And if it's suboptimal, if it creates variety in errors and bad results, you could have a problem selecting the right people. And that has led to a tough blow and being reactive as you are, feeling like you can't get any traction. On the other hand, it could be the leadership. For example, maybe it's the fact that it's not a priority for you to work on your business. You want to please the customer, and your assumption is that you've got to keep the whole thing flowing. You've got to keep the boat afloat. So what happens is any meetings or time to become a strategist, to work on your business, to get ahead, takes a back seat. So it continues down this path of less time to prepare equals less leverage equals more terror. I mean, you should be fearful because you're in that spin. It's like a death spiral of sameness. And the third component is the people. And this is the last one I suggest that we look at. It's often the first one that the entrepreneur brings up. Well, JD, it's got to be my people. You know, it's them, it's them, it's them. And more often it's really the leadership and how you're setting it up. And it's often the systems. So it could be the people. It could be the wrong people in the positions. It could be their attitude. It could be morale. Or it could be one person who's the poison pill and causing everybody else to lower their standards. So now, Jim, that you have a model in front of you, I'd like to hear your feedback on the challenge. What are your thoughts at this point?
Well, I like hearing what you're talking about, the system. The system really, again, it's. I've heard the analogy trying to fix the racing car while you're racing down the racetrack. And it is absolutely the hardest thing in the world to do. Yeah, and in terms of the people, we've tried to pick as good a people as employees as we can. But what happens, JD, is I find that people get into bad habits along with having to serve the client and everything, and then we get into bad habits, and then that just, as I like to term, the death spiral.
Well, Jim, I'd like to be very direct with you. Would you give me that permission?
Of course.
Okay, and where I'm coming from on this is purely to help you. I'm not trying to take a shot at you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Could you and I please take responsibility for hiring these people?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's take that responsibility because often that's where the problem is the hiring system is a sub-optimizing system. And when I say sub-optimizing, it means that it is not hitting the result you want or the result the system can produce every single time. And I find often that the hiring system is overlooked because we've just got so much to do really to stop and think and then act and calibrate and finesse. It's too costly. We've just got to keep going. We've got to stay in this treadmill and just keep going and going and going. You know, the second thing is, Jim, is I question your assumptions. You know, you have 6 people. You've probably thought about the cost of losing 1 or 2. It'd be a real death blow, right?
Yeah, it would because we have so much work.
Okay, so step back for a minute. I want you to be the fly on the wall for a minute. You're not Jim anymore. You're just the fly sitting in that office.
Okay.
And think about what's going on there. So you've got these people. You've got these individuals. You've got a boss who is disabled and amputated at the limbs, trying to reach a new level, despite the fact he doesn't have the team to do it. There isn't any preparation going on. The boss is responsible for hiring and putting him there. What does the boss assume about alternatives? Does the boss have any backups in human capital to replace the bad eggs? What do you do with the C players?
Well, what I find what happens is that the other team members will simply compensate. They won't want to keep on complaining about it. They'll just go get it done so that it's done. But then now they've spent their time doing somebody else's work. The other people are seen as skating by, and they don't want to. It hurts morale.
What kind of message do you think it sends to them about you, the A players?
That I guess I'm not as engaged as I should be.
Nor do you want them there.
Right.
It sends them a message that you don't respect their time and their extra effort, their work ethic that you hired them for. So let's think about this. Think about the good of the many or the good of the few. Would you rather be without the C players for the good reasons or be with them for the wrong ones?
Well, I don't think I want them around at all.
Okay, but do you have the guts to let them go?
Well, it would be a tough decision because I guess like a lot of people, you feel like, well, if I get rid of somebody, yeah, I might save paying them that salary. But at the same time, though, it's the fear of, well, what are we going to do now? What happens if we really are overwhelmed and it looks like we're cutting back, and the other employees might think that, but it would be a very to some degree it'd be kind of scary, but maybe it's a risk I need to take.
Well, I'd like you to pick the lesser of both evils. So what if they stay? What would be the cost? What would be the cost if they stay?
Well, I guess that, again, we have more mediocre service and more upset A players.
Which leads to what?
Well, a lot of apathy in the workplace, and they won't care, and I'm spending more time at the office then.
And what will happen then?
Our clients won't get good service, and we're going to probably start losing clients.
And how much would that cost you? Make it meaningful. I mean, what would you be looking at then?
Oh, well, we can't start losing clients. We'll lose our business.
Okay, now go back to the other alternative. So you're getting rid of people, and then finding better players for those spots. What would happen then?
Well, I think we'd probably have a better opportunity to kind of start fresh. And that's, to be honest with you, JD, that's what I think about a lot in terms of my business is what if we could start fresh over again.
Well, what would happen if you changed out the players, but those same players, well, the new players are going through the same problems? What are you going to notice then?
Well, I kind of hate to admit it, but it'd be a leadership problem.
I think you're right on it. Or it could be a systems problem, that you haven't equipped them with what they need to know and do to do the job. Or you haven't fixed the problem, the real problem in your hiring system. You continue to hire substandard people. One of the reasons, Jim, that we do that is exactly what you're talking about. We're just too busy being busy to do something that would make us a lot less busy. And it just comes down to your values of where you put your priorities. If you want to put more emphasis into finding great people, you'll make a better assessment, you won't compromise your standards, and you'll probably predict their future performance better. On the other hand, you can make it an urgent decision to get rid of people and then react to this and hire when you need the positions filled. But one of the worst times to hire is when you need to fill positions. So what I suggest is that you really look at your leadership in terms of how you're hiring and the fact that you're probably not hiring all the time, are you?
Well, no. Usually, I guess like most folks, we go out and look for somebody when there's a need. But I like what you said. Yeah, it's when there is a need, and you don't have the right perspective on things then.
Absolutely, and I'm sure you can see that when you lower those standards, I call it the breathe on glass syndrome. You bring in somebody, and then they end up pretty much reinforcing your fears, which is, oh my goodness, I'm having the same problem. I thought it was a different person. You find out quickly it wasn't the people, it was the system. So I'm going to ask you to make a ground rule with me. I'm going to ask you to, number one, consider putting hiring in a pole position, making it one of the most important responsibilities, among others, such as marketing and sales, to keep the money coming in. But it's the one job that you will never delegate, whether you're at $10 million, $20 million, $30 million, $100 million in business revenue per year. It's the one thing that you absolutely must do. Is that something you're willing to do?
Oh, absolutely. If that's going to be one of the main keys to keeping the business running and making it run well, and not to have these kinds of headaches, I'm on board.
Okay, great. So here's what I'd like you to do. Here's your assignment from the call, is make a decision on who needs to go. And I want you to discern it with keen awareness. Don't lie to yourself. Don't rationalize. Just get that this person is either a C, a B, or an A, and they really are, and that cats don't bark. Number two, I'm going to ask you in a mental assignment to change your paradigm, to change your mental model, to change how you look at this in terms of seeing people for who they are, not who you want them to be. Seeing your team for who they are, not who you want them to be. Because if you see who you want them to be, then you're blindly optimistic, and you're not taking on the kind of discernment that would help you as a business owner fire very fast and hire very slow.
It makes a lot of sense, especially while we're talking, of course, I'm thinking about my business and how people act and the kind of performance that we're getting. But I think you're absolutely right. I walk out the door, JD, and I have this vision that people are handling crises, that they're serving the customer, that they're taking initiative, and I come back in the door, and sometimes that's not the case. And so what you're saying really does hit home.
It appears to me that you've let the bad guys stay on the team for too long. And by virtue of staying on the team, the poison pill has started. It started to digest itself into the psyche and the habits that the A players have. So what you've done is you have sent a message to the A players that they aren't worth keeping. And number two is you've prolonged a C player longer than you probably should have. So one of the suggestions that I'm giving you here is, in your course ahead as a business builder, is to hire people very slowly. And do that by constantly hiring 24/7, proactively hire instead of reactively hire when you need the position filled. The next assignment is this, and this is the best one of all, is you are called upon as a business owner to know the needs of the work, Jim. And that means for you to really sit down and think about the top 3 or 5 deliverables or results that those positions that you're ridding people in, they need to accomplish. What would be the 3 or 5 results that are tied to the organization's goals? So I know you're a sales organization. What would they need to produce? How can we make them assets? You need to define success in the job before you hire for it. And by knowing that, that'll help you use past performance as a predictor of future performance. That will put you in a position to stay away from your own biases and really get the proof you need so that they can do the job. It'll also help you advertise the job and utilize that picture, that success that you're looking for. Imagine you're sitting down with them 6 months from now. What would they need to have accomplished to be totally successful? I'm asking you to put that in writing and use that for the sourcing and the hiring piece. Is this helpful?
Absolutely, it is. It's making a lot of sense, and you mentioned I need to write that down. Do I sit down and go over that with them, or how do I hold them accountable for that with my expectations?
Well, of course, you're going to use it in the hiring dimension, but after that, once you hire the right individual, and the individual that has comparable past performance to the future performance you expect, sit down with them and have them sign off on that so that they know the expectations of the job. And then set up, if there's any training gaps between the performance that they've shown and the requirements that you have, go ahead and set up a training outline and start asking them for some time, put together a training schedule, and orient them around the impact areas that are absolutely critical to their job. They'll appreciate that. You'll help finesse them as players, and they'll probably hang out a lot longer because you're giving them attention. And I'm going to challenge you, Jim, to change one more thought, and that is that you make a priority out of working on your business, not just in your business. And you consider that on your calendar, you absolutely must work on it. Because if you don't, it's like you're trying to build a house, but it's burning down from the back. And you're trying to build it faster than it can burn down. That's the game. So instead of doing it that way, how about we build a plane and fly it?
I like that.
Okay, so that's what it looks like. So did I help you today?
You really did, JD. I like the analogy of trying to build a house while it's burning down. Because when I first called, my first thing was that we just can't get everything done, and because of all the things happening each and every day. But I appreciate what you're saying because it means that we have to take time to build this business and to design it because we can't do that on the fly.
I agree with you, Jim. In fact, if you were to pick one thing that you could be a competitive threat to others about, it's this particular habit. In sports, we practice, we rehearse, we better our game, we improve our skills, we work on our abilities. And in business, this is very traditional that we get caught up in just doing, but the strategist always wins. So you got to reawaken him at the wheel, Jim. This is what you got into business for, being an entrepreneur. And getting a line of sight to your dream is about preparing and executing all at once. So you need to figure out a way to do them in the same room. And you can do that by managing your time well. So please take a note on what you've learned on this call. I hope it was a defining moment for you and a clean break from who you were and who you've been into who you're about to become. I wish you a lot of luck in your business.
Thanks, JD, and thanks for taking my call.
Thank you, Jim. We'll be right back.
Congratulations. You've become a success in the business world. You've set goals and you've surpassed them. But now you ask yourself,
how can I muster the ambition and time to continue encouraging growth and still have time to enjoy life? Where did the excitement and ambition I once had go?
that's where we come in. High-level performance. Executive coaches that, simply put, in 3 years could help you triple your income, triple your fun, and triple your free time. Find out more at highlevelperformance.com. That's highlevelperformance.com. highlevelperformance.com.
After a long, hard day with the global war on terrorism, open a tall, cool Kyle Warren show. Ah, that crisp, refreshing taste, that smooth style, that effervescing attitude, and without all that other stuff that can, well, bog you down. Helping to put back what the daily media assault takes away, The Kyle Warren Show, each weekday on Talk2K.com. That's The Kyle Warren Show on Talk2K.com.
Bogged down with all the stuff? Things gotten tough with all the success? Get ready for freedom with the VIP Coach. You're listening to No Hype Allowed with Executive Coach John Davidson.
And we're back. I appreciated you listening to Jim. Jim has a hiring problem. We went over the triangle, the principles, leadership, system, or the people. And it's usually one of those. We often look at the people. We think it's all them. They're the bad guy. But what about our responsibility? Not reckless responsibility, but it is worth looking. Looking at what we're doing, how we're setting up the game. We're creating the game. They play. So we've got that piece, and then we've got the system piece. And we look at the interdependence of things. We start to say, well, wait a minute. If this is happening, well, what's happening here? And if this is happening, well, why is that happening? We step back and we start looking at how all the components fit together. Jim said that, well, the A players, when they see that the C players aren't pulling their weight, they start to come in and take over all the work. They come in and they start doing all the work. They just reinforce the C's to be more C's. And the C's got a good thing going, man. I mean, geez, there's people on the team that will do it all, and they can pawn it off and stay the way they are and go in there half-cocked. Oftentimes what happens is the C's are way tentative. You know why? Because they told you they could do more than they could. They've overestimated themselves. And the truth is, they weren't going to do anything anyway, but they led you to believe it because they wanted the job. Then they get into the job, and look what happens. The A's start taking over. They start doing all the work. And the C's go, well, I'd rather have A do it because I probably don't know what I'm doing anyway, so I'll have the A do it. I'll ask all the A's to do all the work, and I'll just sit back and I'll play C, and I don't have to make any mistakes. I don't have to take the heat. I don't have to take the burden. You know why? Because it's all about decision-making. They don't want to take the risks. They'd rather see the other people take the risks because you know why? Somebody might find out their true face. It's the mask. They might find out that they really aren't as good as they were leading you to believe. And I go back to the hiring. How could you have discerned better whether they could do the job or not? And there are very clear ways to do that. There are ways to get them out of inaccuracies and lying by using good references and by asking questions that are postured in a certain way so that the individual tells the truth. Maybe indirectly they tell the truth. One of the ways I do that is in the interview, I have them lay out an organizational chart of the largest team they've been a part of. I ask for names and titles. I'm ruthless about it. And then I go around the circle, their peers, their supervisors, and their subordinates, and I ask the individual, how would so-and-so describe you? How would they describe your style? Who did you grow or develop the most? Who did you have the most influence over? Who were the difficult people on the team? How did you handle them? What are they getting? What's the message that the candidate is getting? That I am going to ask those people the same questions. I'm going to ask them questions like, how would you describe so-and-so's performance? What are your thoughts about performing these objectives on the job? It insinuates it infers, right? It indirectly communicates that I'm going to check with those people. So it's going to cost them if they lie. If they say, well, my supervisor describes me as a juggernaut. They describe me as an unbelievable player. They describe me as the candidate of choice. I'm going to go back to them and get very specific input. I'm going to say, so-and-so told me a little bit about how you described her, and I'd like to know what your thoughts are about doing the job. Now, some of them may say, the references may say, well, I don't want to get my liability into this. But then there are those that will. And if you're looking for great references, here's a way to posture it. Call them up and say a connect at the hip statement. Hi there, I was given your name by a mutual associate named John Dokes. Now, I know you know how hard it is to find great people. I need your help. I need your help in predicting this person's future performance. Would you help me? How would you answer that? Well, I've just shown you a truth, a common truth that we both agree on. I know you know how hard it is to find great people. And most people would say in a business, absolutely. It's probably the number one challenge is finding great people. People that are going to do great and people that are going to stay a while. So by saying that, in a sense, I'm pulling out their empathy. They feel sorry for me. And by doing that, they're willing to talk about how this person would operate in the environment that I'm putting them in. Furthermore, preparing for the hiring process. It's not just about the profile. It's not just about knowing the needs of the work. Although I did say to Jim he needs to write down those performance objectives. But had I had more time with him, I would have suggested 2 more things. Number 1, Jim needs to sit in that position for a day and understand the personality traits that are required for that position. Personality does correlate with performance. How a person was brought up does correlate with the performance. So do you use some kind of personality inventory, some kind of assessment? We use the TASE assessment. It's a world-class inventory that predicts future performance. It tells me how an individual performs under pressure. And I can use that to augment the data points that I get from the interview, so it makes my case even stronger about how that person's going to behave in certain situations. Hiring is predicting future performance. That is what it is. And there are many different predictors of it. One of the other ones is understanding the culture of the business. See, when I take a person from one environment and I put him into another environment, there's a potential breakdown. If they're coming from a large company and they're coming into a small company, how are they going to approach the speed of decisions, the pace of change? Things are happening so quickly. In large companies, it's highly specialized. There's the vice president of the left widget on the left bumper. It's very specialized. Their work description is very localized. It's predictable. But in small companies, it's let's get it done. It's cross-functional. Whatever needs to be done, let's go. So it demands variety and an individual who's very adaptable. So think about the environment. What about the standards of performance? Let's say I have an individual coming from a highly sophisticated environment where they rely on technology for answers, where they have systems, documented manuals, checklists, forms. Really, they don't have to think about much. They just have to follow it. They're given specific instructions. The business owner controls most of the business and the way it's done. He has a very specific set of structures. So what happens when a person like that comes into a culture of independent action, independent decisions? They're not going to feel like they're being trusted. There's a potential reaction there. They don't want to play by the rules. They're used to being a creative outlet individual, somebody who thinks on their own and thinks autonomously. So these are some real things to consider, folks. How do you prepare for the position? Hiring is the Achilles heel of the business owner. It is one of the most important things that you can do. People around you, the people you have in your business, will make or break your career. You either hire smart or manage tough. I've been doing this for 10 years, and I got to tell you, hiring is up there with marketing and sales. It is the number one issue. Next to organization, marketing, and sales, it is up there. So it's worth putting your time and energy into it. What you can do, what you could start thinking about is taking a really discerning look at the people in your organization. How do you know what they're doing? How do you really know they're following what you're asking them to follow? What's your culture in your organization? How would you describe what's acceptable or unacceptable? Be the fly on the wall. How would you define the personality levels for the position? What kind of personality sets acclimate well in the environment that you're in? What kind of environment do you have? And what are the position elements? What's the profile, the performance profile of the position? What are the top 3 performance objectives that if the person executed them and delivered them, they would be a total success? you are called upon to articulate these points. How can you honestly go in and make a fair and adequate assessment and predict future performance if you don't know the game? See you next time on No Hype Allowed. This is JD, and as always, business building's where it's at. Remember, you have a cash flow machine to buy time with your money. I'll see you next time on the VIP Coach No Hype Allowed.
Overwhelmed? Can't get to anything you planned?
Has the thrill ride of too much gotten ahead of you?
Get back that confidence with the VIP Coach. No Hype Allowed.